We knew it was going to happen. We just didn't know when. Dana White finally has the ultimate revenge on Jon Jones. If you guys don't know, Dana White drops an absolute bombshell last night at the UFC 318 post-fight press conference regarding Jon Jones and the White House. And this is amazing because we all know Jon Jones drugged the sport through the mud, destroyed the heavyweight division, and made an absolute mockery of the sport these last 2 years. And Dana White and the UFC allowed him to do so, embarrassing the sport, dragging the fans along, putting Tom Aspinall on the shelf, and now it's finally time for Jon Jones to get his bad karma. Finally, we can stick it to Jon Jones and say, Dana White finally steps up and stands up for the fans in the UFC because, if you guys don't know, Jon Jones heard that the UFC was going to do this White House card in 2026, and obviously, he was extremely, extremely interested in it. He likes the president, he wants to fight at the White House card. He's very excited about it. He's even put himself back in the testing pool. But I love that now Dana White is pushing back on that. We knew Dana White was going to come out and dunk on Jon Jones. We knew it would happen. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And finally, at the UFC 318 press conference, we got clarity on how Dana White feels about Jon Jones fighting at the White House. And I could not be more happy. It could not be a better response from Dana. This bald-ass dude has been gaslighting the fans about Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall for years, and now we finally got rid of this pest that is Jon Jones out of the UFC. And 13 days after his retirement, he's talking about coming back to the testing pool to return to fight Tom Aspinall. But now Dana White has taken the side of the fans. He's finally stood up to this joke of a man that is Jon Jones. He was asked, Dana White, what do you think about Jon Jones wanting to return to fight at the White House card and potentially headline? And, this is a different tone we're hearing from Dana. In recent years, Dana White did a lot of glazing. He did a lot of Jon Jones does whatever he wants. He's the pound for pound #1 fighter in the world. But now, let's have a listen to what Dana feels about Jon Jones fighting on the White House card.
Jones says he wants to be on there too, and he says he would fight whoever the champion is at that time. But would you be okay with him coming back and potentially winning that belt again? And you might have to go through.
Well, it's not even about him winning the belt. I mean, how I felt about him. I can't risk putting him in big positions in a big spot and have something go wrong.
Fair enough.
Yeah, especially the White House card.
Dana.
There it is, boys. He cannot risk putting Jon Jones in a big spotlight, especially the White House card, because this has potential to be the biggest card in UFC history. This is going to be streamed to, probably tens of millions of Americans. This might be the highest selling pay-per-view of all time if we're still under pay-per-view model by next year. And Jon Jones, the golden goose, the golden boy of the UFC, who's been dragging the sport through the mud, as I said, for years and years, finally gets one stuck to him. And I agree with Dana. Jon Jones is the last person you want to trust to headline the White House card, because this guy is obviously going to get arrested during fight week. He's going to be blasting steroids and failing drug tests. He's going to be beating women in the parking lot or in the building of the White House. He's going to be doing all kind of crazy stuff, and we can't have that. And Dana White finally realizes that having Jon Jones headline the White House card would be an absolute nightmare. And even having him on the card at all, because if you guys don't remember, Jon Jones ruined UFC 200. Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier 2 was supposed to headline UFC 200, but good old Johnny Boy tested positive leading up to the fight to 2 different steroids and had to pull him from the card. And as a result of that, the main event was Miesha Tate versus Amanda Nunes, and Brock Lesnar obviously returned, but the card would have been so much bigger if Jon Jones would have made it to fight night, not pop for every steroid in the book, and have DC fight Anderson Silva on 1 day's notice instead. And we had Miesha Tate versus Amanda Nunes as a main event. People forget, man, Jon Jones ruined UFC 200, and he ruined so many cards in modern day UFC history. He's drugged the sport through the mud. He's failed more drug tests than any champion that you can think of in UFC history. He's been stripped of the title 3 or 4 different times. He's been arrested countless times. This guy has infinite controversy. He's the last person we need repping America for the White House is Jon Jones. Give me Marab. Marab's a UF citizen. Sure, he's from Georgia, but at least Marab is a respectable man that follows the law and treats people with dignity. Jon Jones has no dignity left, and yeah, I'm so happy to hear Dana White stick it to Jon Jones and say, no, the last thing I need is this guy messing up this card. You can build a wonderful UFC White House card without Jon Jones. We cannot trust Jon Jones to be booked against Tom Aspinall to return for the heavyweight title, or whoever it is. It's obviously going to be Aspinall. Nobody's beating Aspinall. But can you imagine the White House card, UFC 2026, the biggest card in UFC history, Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. 2 weeks out from the fight, Jon Jones pulls out. He has a broken vagina. And then from there, we're kind of screwed. But yeah, man, Jon Jones finally gets his karma. You guys know that I've always said, and I was always confused, and I would always say, why did UFC and Dana allow this guy to drag the sport through the mud and bring it down as far as he did? Why did they allow him to fight Stipe when there was an interim champion? Why did they allow him to fail so many drug tests and come back to the sport? Why did they allow him to have entire events moved on a week's notice because he couldn't pass a drug test? Why was this guy given? Jon Jones has the most UFC privilege, or Dana White privilege, in UFC history. There's no other fighter that has had more Dana White privilege and just UFC preferential treatment than Jon Jones. This guy has ruined the sport. He's ruined Daniel Cormier's career by doing steroids and beating him and making him look embarrassed in front of his kids and live television and tested positive for every steroid in the book, right? He's made a mockery of the heavyweight division and ruined like a year and a half of Tom Aspinall's career, right? He fought Stipe when there was an active interim champion. I mean, dude, this guy just is the scum of the earth. And I'm just so happy that Dana White finally sees what we see, man. And you know what? Like I said, I knew this was going to happen. I knew Dana White was eventually going to turn the tide on Jon Jones and say, no, no, and no. This guy's ruined enough events. And you know this is going to piss Jon Jones off. You know it hurts him because Jon Jones loves this White House card. It's the world to him. That's like, obviously he fought in his last fight in front of Trump, and he was so excited. He did the Donald Trump dance. He was so excited to have Trump there. And how bad is it going to hurt Jon Jones's ego if the UFC does a White House card and he is not allowed to be on it? Because guess what? He's not reliable. And Jon Jones is in a position where they're not just going to put him versus any old person on, like, they're not going to do Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes at the White House rematch. They're just not going to do that. They're going to want Jon Jones to fight for the title if he does fight on there, because he would be an American fighting for an American, to be the only American champion, assuming there's none by next year. And he's forfeited that because he's made an absolute mockery of the sport. And yeah, man, what do you guys think about this? I think this is way past due. Karma comes back to get everybody. This guy's ruined the sport. I can say it a billion times. Jon Jones has ruined the sport. For me, for everybody. Yes, Jon Jones lived rent-free in my head the last 2 years of his damn career because this guy sat around, pissed me off. I was waiting for a Tom Aspinall announcement. I made countless videos on this absolute jackass where he just kept saying, I'm not going to fight Tom Aspinall. He doesn't deserve it. He hasn't done anything. Drug the sport through the mud. And yes, I am happy that Jon Jones is getting karma. I am happy to see it all shoved in his face when he's done nothing but treat the fans in the UFC like shit over these past 10 years. And I'm sick of it. And the UFC fans are sick of it. And it's nice to see this bald fucking Dana White come on here and say what he said. I'm getting a little emotional, guys, and go ahead and call me pathetic in the comments. I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, if the White House card does happen in 2026, if the UFC does pull this off, I really do think this would be the biggest card in UFC history. And Dana White hit the nail on the head. You cannot have a guy like Jon Jones fighting at the White House card. We need Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev for the main event. Sure, they're not American. That's fine. You can stack the undercard full of Americans and full of like 3 title fights. Have 2 Americans fighting for a title one way or another, you know? Have the main event be Ilia versus Islam, the biggest fight in UFC history, and just stack it with all Americans on the bottom card. I could see freaking Chris Weidman coming back, dude. All these freaking old heads. Justin Gaethje's going to want to be on there. Max Holloway. Even Dustin Poirier might put his name in the hat to jump back on that White House card, even though he just retired. Just keep in mind, this card is not supposed to happen until 2026. So we're going to have to see how the landscape of the UFC is in a year. Dana White said it himself. The whole landscape and the whole rankings and who's around and is not around by 2026 is going to be completely different. But they're getting in talks with the White House to make this thing happen. And I honestly don't know if this card would be like an outdoors card or would they build like an actual like indoor building where they would fight inside? Would it be like an Apex? I'm not sure, because it would be very risky to book a UFC fight at the White House in an outdoor type scenario, because then you don't know the weather. Imagine they book a card on a certain day and it just starts pouring down raining. The fighters fighting in the rain. But either way, Let me know what you guys think in the comments about Dana White sticking it to Jon Jones, saying no way this guy's going to ruin the White House card. I couldn't agree more. I'm so happy Dana White came out and said this. Does this make me pathetic? Probably a little, but at some point we all get our karma, and this is Jon Jones' time.